Welcome everyone to the Voices of a Black Man. My name is Sherelle James, and I am presenting a series called The Voices of a Black Man. I've sat for the last 2 or 3 weeks just kind of sitting and meditating within myself, trying to figure out what was my place, what was my position, what did I have to say, and where did I want to be as the society, as our community, as the world begins to take on what I'm calling the next civil rights movement. And I'm super excited for this time. I'm honored to be a part of this time. But I really wanted to know what was my contribution. And I sat back and I said, it's the voices of a Black man. We are marching in the streets. We're fighting with Congress. We are on all types of social media talking about the injustices that are happening, things that are going on. But one thing that I don't really see happening a lot is a respectful platform for Black men to just share who they are. They're always thrown in a stereotypical box for society. Number one, seen as silent, which equals absent, or seen as angry, which equals aggressive. Now, I know Black men to be from all different types of backgrounds, have all different types of experiences, dreams, and aspirations. They just happen to be men that happen to be Black, not Black men. And so I'm hoping that as you tune in, as you continue this series, we'll be going through August 1st. My goal is to interview 30 Black men, and then we'll see what happens from there. But as you continue, I hope that you take away something for yourself. We all have biases in our own way. So hopefully just listening, seeing and hearing the stories of each and every man that decides to get on and talk with me, just have a candid discussion, that you listen with your heart and not just with your ears, that you see commonalities. The truth is, I was taught when I was a little girl that if we can meet everyone at the human level, it's so easy to find commonalities as opposed to looking for differences first. We can build. Love is the key, but we can build through that. So I wanted to invite today. Today is the first session of the Voices of a Black Man, and I'm so excited to have with me Dr. Clay L. Barrow. I'm not going to pretend like this is a guy that I have no idea who he is, that I'm just meeting to interview. He is family for me, and I'm so happy to have him on. I know Clay as a wonderful cousin, as a pastor, as a confidant, as someone that we have some great conversations without judgment. But I want you to meet him today and learn more about him, because I'm sure I'm going to learn more about him as we go today and understand who this Black man is as he tells his story through his lens. Welcome today, Dr. Barrow.
Thank you so much, Sherelle. This has been something I've been looking forward to, and thank you for the invitation to join in this particular platform, because I do believe that this is a season where these kinds of engagements, these kinds of conversations are so desperately needed within our community, but not just within the African diaspora, but also the worldwide community. What is it that, how do we understand what it means to be Black? And also how do we understand our role as Black men, or men who happen to be Black in this context? So just to kind of give a little background as to who I am, I'm the pastor of Bethel AME Church here in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I'm also an adjunct professor of pastoral theology and supervised ministry at Hood Theological Seminary. A whole lot of titles, a whole lot of roles. And my journey to get here was a meandering one, but one I do believe that God had his hand on. Born in Philadelphia to parents both who are from Windsor, North Carolina. And in 1974, mom, after her divorce from my father, relocated back to her hometown of Windsor, where I grew up. And so I claim both Philadelphia and Windsor as my homes. Growing up in a community that in some ways you had individuals who valued education, in other ways there were other values at work, other expectations. And so it's interesting to me that as we're having this conversation, that involves stereotypes within communities, we also have stereotypes within our own community. And I'll address that in my conversation with you today. What does it mean to be a short, fat, smart Black boy in Windsor, North Carolina in the 70s and early 80s? What does that mean? And what was that experience like? And different expectations from within the community and outside of the community. And so a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill with a double major in political science and psychology, went to Emory University, the Candler School of Theology, where I received my Master of Divinity in pastoral care and Black church studies as a double major in my master's. Had the privilege of serving the Atlanta Police Department as a chaplain for 6 years, as well as teaching at the Westminster Schools, teaching Old and New Testament there. And then relocating to, working for Atlanta Urban Ministry as the director of emergency aid for the homeless population, as well as a tutor in a battered women's shelter down there, and setting up a tutorial service at a church where I was on staff as well. Relocating to Sumter, South Carolina because of my wife's work. And when I went there, did CPE or clinical pastoral education for a year and a piece to become certified in that, and then worked for the Department of Mental Health for a number of years. And I started pastoring at that time. And I've held 5 pastors. Well, I'm on my 5th pastorate now between South Carolina, Virginia, and North Carolina. And upon relocating back to North Carolina in 2009, just kind of doing a number of different things, but eventually finding my way back into the academy, where I went to Hood Theological Seminary, received my doctorate of ministry, and completing that, and was hired as a full-time professor there as an assistant professor of pastoral theology and the director of supervised ministry and the director of the Center for Chaplaincy. Did that work for a while before the church called again and said, listen, we need you to take this church in Greensboro. And so here I am, no longer on full-time faculty, but just kind of teaching a class every now and then as I'm able to in order to serve the kingdom of God. And so that's kind of been my journey in a nutshell in terms of my professional journey. But in terms of this whole notion of Blackness and being Black in such a time as this, it's an interesting time to have this conversation, because to me, as we deal with the stereotypes that we're combating in the greater society, we also have to deal with with our own housekeeping and house cleaning. As a man who happens to be Black, I personally believe that Blackness, as we think of in terms of physics, Blackness contains all of the light waves of any kind of light wave. And so it contains all light. It absorbs all light. And so therefore, to say that one is Black is to say that you are a conglomeration of all different types of forces that help to create you. And there should be diversity within what we call Blackness. There should not be one kind of model that we follow, but Blackness should involve all types of people in all walks of life.
So let's stop right there.
Sure.
That's very, very, and thank you so much for just giving us a quick history of just the breadth. We can't do it service because it's taken a lifetime up to now to get to that point.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
A great breadth of depth of all the things that you've kind of done throughout your life. And I know there's little things here along the way that we haven't even touched on. But you talk about Blackness being diverse, and you talk about it should be diverse. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean about that, and what does that mean when you say that?
Sure. And a lot of my particular perspective was carved out of my experiences growing up in rural North Carolina, Windsor, where in terms of my description, my description of my body, and also my intellect. I've always been an intellectual, but in the community where I came from, that was not valued. And amongst
So
my
you
Black
came,
friends, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
but you came from a community that was mostly farmers, or can you explain a little bit about the background of the community
Sure,
that you were coming from so we can understand?
sure. You had plants at such as peanut plants and lumber plants, and where lumber was harvested. Um, you had a large chicken producing plant in the community, um, and for the most part, if you had a college degree, you needed to leave Windsor in order to live, in order to
Hmm.
do something else other than work the field or punch the clock, so to speak. And
Gotcha. So it
so,
sounds like it was a hard-working town. You came from a hard-working
absolutely,
town where they were hard-working people that believed in hard-working values that really
absolutely.
didn't deal with intellectual or education as much as it dealt with just a physical hard labor.
That's part of it.
Okay.
But the other part is there are various stereotypes within our own community
Mm,
um, where it seemed that athleticism was more valued than intellectualism.
gotcha.
And so what I experienced as a child growing up, and as a teenager growing up, my Black friends said I was too white in order to be Black, and then my white friends said that I was too Black in order to be white. Um,
Interesting.
uh, and so that was always a tension that I experienced. I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm a poor, short, fat, intellectual kind of guy who's also asthmatic. No,
Mm,
I am not going to be playing football. No, I'm not going to play basketball. And so I was ostracized by both communities.
mm,
And so I had to find my models in other places. And so what I did, I made a choice. I chose to dive into books. I chose to dive into science. I chose to dive into history. And who became my heroes were W.B. Du Bois, um,
mm,
Frederick Douglass, Carter G. Woodson,
mm.
Sojourner Truth. Those are the individuals who became my heroes.
What
And
drew
so,
you to them?
well, I've always had a brain. I've always had a mind, and I guess it's just kind of the way in which the Creator created me. I've always been drawn to books,
Mm-hmm.
um, and history, and so that is where I drew my inspiration and my strength, because I did not find community the way in which I sought community amongst my own. And I had individuals, adults in my life. I thank God for my mother. I thank God
Mm-hmm.
for my godmother and other folk around me who encouraged me to exercise my brain.
Mm,
And I'm grateful that even though some of the men did not even have high school educations, but yet they would sit down with me and entertain all of the inquisitive questions that I
mm,
presented as to who we are and why are we the way we are. And
mm-hmm.
so I found comfort being with adults more so than I found being amongst my own peers, because my peers were judgmental and my peers pushed me away, whereas the adults embraced me and allowed me to soar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found myself developing um, my mind and developing my hunger for history. And as I pursued history, that's kind of where I found my inspiration in other individuals. And so, and still to this day, I find it interesting that we celebrate Black athleticism, but do we give the same attention to intellectualism?
Right.
Do we give the same attention to, though I don't agree with his politics, but individuals such as a Dr. Ben Carson,
Mm-hmm.
um, a phenomenal um, um, uh, surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
creating whatever he's created, a pediatric surgeon that he was able to do. Um, do we give enough attention to individuals who are gifted in that regard? Or do we just look for the person who's throwing a ball or catching a ball? I struggle with that. And
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to Blackness, we need to be able to embrace both, all aspects of Blackness,
Sure.
all those who excel. And it does not depend upon a particular image.
Sure. No, I think that that's a very great point, and it's one that lends to a lot of the athletes that we have today that realize that they have a platform and are using their intellectual side. Definitely their athletic side got them to that platform, but their intellectual sides are allowing them to do a lot of things that have changed the game for a long time. I think about LeBron, and I definitely want to bring it back to you, but I just want to talk about LeBron deciding that I'm not going to wait to
Absolutely.
be traded. I'm going to figure out my own trade, and I'm going to take matters in
Absolutely.
my own hand. Them now being their own brand. But I do understand what you're saying. So I can see a shift and a move with a lot of athletes, even the platform that they have taken with what's going on right now and in the atmosphere
Absolutely.
of what's happening right now and speaking up. Definitely we would be remiss if we didn't even say Colin Kaepernick back in the day, and he wasn't the only
Absolutely.
one that was doing it. He's one that kind of got known for it when there was a lot of people sitting or kneeling or doing some other things as well.
And look
But
at Bubba making his stance in NASCAR.
oh my gosh,
I'm so proud of
it's
him.
so awesome. Yes, yes, Bubba Wallace. Just saying, I'm not going anywhere. But I think that speaks to exactly what you're speaking to. And I'm going to stop and talk about Bubba Wallace really quick because he comes from country town, grew up with NASCAR, loves NASCAR. I don't know what kind of music he listens to, but I'm sure some of it's got some country in it, just with loving NASCAR and things of that nature, which shows the diversity already
Absolutely.
in being a Black man. Because
Yes.
I believe, and you tell me, depending on where you grow up, depending on the experiences that you have, you tend to lean towards different things. Being an athlete was not your thing.
Right.
Some of it might have been because of cards that you were dealt,
Yep.
but others of it was because you just were more intellectual and
Yep.
were curious and you wanted to learn things and do things.
Yep.
Doesn't make you really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't make you different. Just
No.
makes you who you are.
Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
that we need to let's talk about just being who you are.
Mm.
You have had a road from North Philly to North Carolina to Georgia to Virginia to North Carolina, Virginia to now North Carolina, South Carolina, just all over, just up and down the Eastern Seaboard,
Yep.
Southern
That's
Eastern
right.
Seaboard. You
That's
have
right.
partied on the Eastern Seaboard, but you've done it through education. You've done it through what you've given back to the community and the various jobs that you had or
Yep.
the callings for your life.
Yep.
During that time, that span of time, how have you gotten to a place where you're like, I am Dr. Clay L. Barrow, regardless of what room I walk in, regardless of where I go? How did that kind of form?
Funny that you would ask that question. I was thinking along those lines last night, and I was trying to pinpoint that shift. And I don't know if I can pinpoint exactly on a timeline when that shift occurred. But I can tell you that at some point, I recognized my space in the African diaspora and decided to claim it. And not only to claim it, but to fill it. To fill it with everything that I have to offer this world. What was dealt to me, don't care about what was dealt to me. I have to play what I have and to play it to the best of my ability. And so regardless of what came and what struggles that came along with it, because, truth be said, life is meant to be a struggle. It's not meant to be a bed of roses. And so whatever the struggle is, being determined to come out on top and being determined to allow that struggle to make me stronger instead of to make me weaker. So I'm not exactly sure where that turn happened, but I do remember claiming it and then rolling with it.
So, would you say that even in growing up, you were different, but we know you were loved. You know, you
Oh yeah.
didn't say I wasn't loved and didn't have loving people around me. You just said I was
Oh no.
different and kind of an outcast
Right.
with my peers, which we understand kids and how kids are, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, in that space, growing up in hardworking America, seeing people who take pride in what's produced and being part of their community and making sure that needs are met, not just in their household, but whoever needs
Right.
whatever, they're
Right.
there to make sure it's happening. If I got it, you
Right.
got it type thing. Do
Right.
you think that plays some part, maybe subconsciously as you grew up? That's something you took away. It might not have been an intellectual thing where it taught you from an education in books, but kind of an education in just character.
I do. It's something that my father taught me. He said that, and even though my parents were divorced, I was still very close to my father. Um, and he said, whatever you do, be the best at it.
Mm.
And so if you are a sweeper, sweep that broom with everything that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that stuck with me. And so I figured, well, I can't do this, but here's what I can do. And so that is where I poured my energy, from a boy into adulthood, knowing where my gifts were, identifying where my gifts were, and then working the gift.
Mm.
And the gift always makes a way for you.
Mm.
And so that became my focus. So my broom were books,
Yeah.
and then the application of what I learned from the books to my practices.
Mm. So tell us about, how did we find that gift? How did you realize, okay, this is my gift, and now I need to make my gift work for me?
Sure. I've always been very curious. My mother will tell you that it seems like the first word I learned was why. Uh, and I was never satisfied with just one simple answer. So I've always had that curious mind, and needed to find out more. And I was the kind of kid, when someone told me I don't know, I went to find out why for my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that I could put my hands on, I read it. Whatever it was, I read it. I sought out books because I wanted to answer the question why. And when no one had the answer that was satisfactory, I sought it out myself. And so one thing that I share with anybody and everybody, develop a curiosity. Never settle for just an answer. Seek the truth for yourself. And so, and that's what I had, a choice that I could have made. I could have made the choice to not stoke that curiosity. I could have made the choice to just settle into a routine of those around me. I could have made a choice to allow the peer pressure to become overwhelming, where it broke me. I could have made that choice, but within my thinking, there's something greater than what one can see. And a lot of that has to do with my spirituality. A lot of that has to do with my faith tradition. A lot of that has to do with those whom I looked up to. As my mother said, when we were at church and I couldn't find you, I knew where to find you. You were in the pastor's study. Because I always was with my pastor, because I wanted to ask my pastor that one question: why? About anything and everything. To the point where my pastor would sometimes say to my mother, "Come get your boy." Because he's asking a lot of questions. Take him home. I'll see him next week.
I'll be ready next week when he comes
Yeah,
out.
I'll be ready next week, you know? and so your environment does play a major role as to who one becomes. But even though your environment plays a major role, you still have choices to make. And so I always, when I'm talking to young people, I am always encouraging them to look at the choices that are available to them.
Hmm. No, that's good, and I think that sits in, we have more choices in our hands than not. A lot of the things
Correct.
and a lot of places that we don't go and don't do starts with us first, right? Now, I'm not saying
Absolutely.
that they're not obstacles. That's, I'm not saying that at all, and I don't hear you saying that, but I do hear you saying that once you make it up here first,
Yeah.
then you can overcome those obstacles and figure out ways around and resources to get
Figure out
around a
ways.
lot
That's
of those
right.
obstacles. And I want to talk about, you brought something up about spirituality. And, you know, I've traveled a lot in the last 2 years, specifically with an intent or conscious mind. I've traveled all my life, but just being older, understanding some things, and just looking at things in a different lens for myself. And one of the things I realized is, you know, in our culture, African American culture, doesn't matter if you're saved or not, you know God, you know Jesus. Regardless if you're saved or not, you grew up somewhere with something, you know, as a whole. And I don't want to put everybody in that box. Just, I'm saying as a culture, because there are those that don't. But I learned that as a culture, meeting and fellowshipping with other cultures, I met so many people who it was their first time. It was very foreign. This the whole idea of church and spirituality or anything like that, it was just so foreign to them. And I know that we're not the only culture that deals in spirituality, but our history, especially our history in America, is rooted, I think, a lot in spirituality, because it's one of those things that not only we already had, but got us through to whatever the next was. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, just from
Sure.
being a pastor and kind of understanding, even in a deeper level, more deeper level than I do?
Sure. 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 First of all, let me address a definition of spirituality
Hmm.
for the greater
Absolutely.
world that will be exposed to this particular conversation. Spirituality has to do with connectivity,
Hmm.
connectivity of energies and connectivity of people, where there's something eternal or greater than what you see in the flesh that connects you. And as members of the African diaspora, we have to understand that our ancestors were deeply spiritual, um, calling God by different names, but yet being able to connect with something greater than themselves. That's a part of our DNA. Um, and what is it that allowed us, even going through the Middle Passage and to the plantations of North America, South America, and over in Europe? What allowed us to maintain a spirituality is, despite what the message was that the white masters tried to tell us in terms of who God is, we knew better, because our spirituality gave us the strength to say, the God that we know and the God that we understand is one who supports and one who undergirds those who are struggling. And so therefore we were able to make that the shift in our minds, that the biblical story of the Exodus applied to us, that we were in Egypt, that America was our Egypt, and we were the Hebrew slaves. So we're able to make that transition because we understood who God was first, through our own spirituality. So with that being said, quite naturally, for many of us to gravitate towards Christianity in the image of Jesus as being the God of the marginalized, because if you look at the Luke text, Luke's particular lens is geared towards those who are marginalized. Um, Here's just one place, you know, y'all, you got to understand, I'm this biblical guy. Uh, here's just one place. When you look at the Beatitudes, how Matthew speaks the Beatitudes and how Luke does, just one passage where Matthew says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Um, Luke says, "Blessed are the poor." He doesn't say poor in spirit. He says, "Blessed are the poor." Okay. Another instance where Matthew will focus on the angel appearing to Joseph to let Joseph know that it's okay to marry this teenager who is pregnant and it wasn't his baby. In Luke's gospel, the angel goes to Mary and speaks to her. And so just kind of those subtle different messages that reminds us that God is the God of the oppressed, to quote James Cone. And God is on the side of the marginalized. And Jesus is on the side of the disinherited, to quote Howard Thurman. And so with those in mind, Christianity to me is a natural place for African American spirituality. Because when we look at Jesus, he's always reaching out to those who have little and those who who are considered to be lost. The leper, that would describe us. The woman with the issue of blood, that would describe us. The woman who was bent over, that would describe us. The man who was the demoniac living in the tombs, that would describe us. So wherever you find the marginalized, that's where you find Jesus. And so therefore he's our savior. So that's kind of me, and how I understand our African spirituality transitions beautifully over to Christianity, where we see Jesus as the God of the marginalized.
Wow. Thank you for that. I knew to ask you that question because I knew you had the answer for me. Now I get to ask the whys. I get to ask the whys.
How about that?
Now that is, I mean, that speaks a lot because we see oppression, but we also see opportunity. I want to talk about the opportunities that you've had in your life that you saw windows. So maybe other people saw it as an oppression, but you saw it as an opportunity. And I think it goes back to the statement that you had earlier when you talked about first deciding within yourself to go further, to look for the answer, those types of things. But I think it speaks to this, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into opportunities that you've had in your life. Opportunities, people that were unsuspected in helping, and places that you were like, who knew?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Let's see. Well, one thing that was in my mind when it came to growing up in Windsor, the only way out of Windsor, because I knew that I would spiritually die if I remained, because my world was bigger, my horizon was further than what I saw there. Couldn't wait to leave. And from my point of view, you could leave only by military or college, or finding work somewhere else. But there was never an option for me to stay. There was a bigger world out there for me. And so opportunities and obstacles, going to UNC Chapel Hill as a poor student. And I will never forget my freshman year, I lost 30 pounds instead of gaining the freshman 15, because I spent many hungry days at UNC. Had to take out loans, Pell Grant, but it was never enough. And so after the first month of getting my money would run out, and I would have to rely upon mom and her meager means to help me to eat. And so there would be days when I would spend 3 days straight without eating a thing and just drinking water from the bathroom or from the kitchen down the hall. And so one of the things that I started doing, I befriended a lot of football players. And so
they always have food.
Yeah, because the other thing about me is I guess because of the toughness that comes about when you have to fight your way through so much, I always do the extreme. I always take the hardest route. If someone gives me a choice between the harder path or the easier path, I'm going to take the harder route every time. That's just kind of my way of thinking. That, oh, you think I can't? I will. Watch me. But I'm not just saying that to others. I'm saying that to myself. Come on, Clay, you can do this. So I would go and work out with them. Or I would go and run. and I would run or work out in order to leave behind the hunger pains. And so, I developed a physique that I had never had before, as a result of being hungry. And so that fueled me as well. It gave me a discipline, to that, in terms of whatever obstacle I face, find another way, use that obstacle to do something else. So I did that there. Opportunities that came, went straight from UNC to graduate school at Emory. And as I was finishing up my degree, I was sitting in class with someone. I was taking a class called New Testament Writings, and Feminism, and feminist thought, or women in early Christian writings. That was the name of it. Women in early Christian writings. And it was an evening class, and I was sitting there beside a gentleman by the name of Tom Curtis. Didn't know who Tom Curtis was, but we would just sit there, and he started, this elderly Caucasian man, always dressed in a bow tie. So we had that in common. We were sitting in class across from each other in bow ties. And as we sat there and talked and engaged, he said, "Well, listen, I teach at a school in here in Atlanta. I think you'll be a good fit on our faculty. Won't you consider applying?" Okay, sure. Didn't know that he was the chair of the Department of Religion at the Westminster Schools.
Oh, wow.
And he saw the potential in me. We would swap papers back and forth. This man can speak 7 languages and write in 7 languages. Brilliant man. But he saw something in me. And he stoked that the teacher in me. And so, yeah, I went to the Westminster Schools as a result of his recommendation. And that was a great opportunity that he afforded me. And still would be at Westminster now if it wasn't for the other places that the Lord would send me in terms of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one opportunity that came. Other obstacles. Well, when we moved to South Carolina, my wife, we moved to South Carolina because of my wife. She was a National Health Service scholar, where she received a full ride to medical school, and we thank God for that. But she had to give 4 years back in the underserved community. And so the community that reached out to her was Sumter, South Carolina. And so that's how we ended up going there. And I was wondering, well, now I'm leaving Westminster. What am I going to do? Where am I going to work? Where am I going to teach? Because I got to get back into the academy. That's where I feel most fulfilled and most satisfied. But then a man by the name of Willie Lee Bethune, yes, related to that Mary McLeod Bethune,
Oh, wow.
one of her relatives. He saw my wife's profile and saw in her profile that she was married, and asked, what is your husband up to when he comes? You're going to be working in the Department of Mental Health. What about him? So he reached out to me and said, look, what you need to do is, I see, send me your resume. And what you need to do is you need to take CPE. You don't need to get this and this and this. Just take CPE, because that's your background anyway. Just do that whole year. Do that whole year. So I did that, and I was hired by the Department of Mental Health in a different agency than the one he represented. So I didn't even have to work for him in order for him to open a door.
Wow.
So, another opportunity that came my way. Pastoring. I was sent to my first church as a pastor before I was ordained, because I had my my degree in place, and my pastor made recommendation to the bishop that I should go and serve a church. And so I was sent under what we call in the AME church, the missionary rule. And because the need was there, and I was sent out to my first charge before I even had my ordination, and my ordination followed me. So I went to my first charge in 2004, and I was ordained in 2005. So again, obstacle and opportunity. And so where the opportunities came, yes, God's hand, but also my willingness. never seeing an obstacle as being my end, but always finding another way. And that is part of what my curious mind has always done, is always sought multiple paths to get in the same direction, or get to the same destination using multiple paths.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Dr. Barrow, that's very powerful. I've got just a couple more questions for you, and then I promise I'm going to let you go.
All right.
I want to talk really quickly because you have an amazing family. Each and every person that's in your household, in their own right, are powerful. And I know that you live with two amazing women. Can you just share just a little bit about them? Nothing personal, but just a little bit about your wife and your daughter.
Sure. Let's start with my wife. We, believe it or not, we met in Berkeley County. She's homegrown. She's your husband's first cousin, Dr. Tawana Walker Barrow. And I first met her in the 8th grade and immediately fell in love with her then. Both of us ended up at UNC Chapel Hill, and we started dating when we were there. And in terms of who she is, I tell her all the time, the reason why I fell in love with you is because you're the smartest woman I ever met. And it was her intellect that drew me to her. A Black woman where I could have these deep and meaningful conversations. And so, though my mind was always geared towards political science and psychology and religion, her point of view was always scientific. And so I would sift some of my thoughts through her mind. That was kind of the start of our relationship. And this year, September the 2nd, matter of fact, will mark 25 years of marriage. And I thank God for that. And she was a Morehead Kane Scholar at UNC and a North Carolina Fellows. So a full ride at UNC and a full ride at Emory University School of Medicine. So quite gifted. She's become a businesswoman on her own. She got her first job out of medical school was with the Department of Mental Health in Sumter, South Carolina. But then she broke away from that and established her own practice, and then had the nerve to hire me to work with her, which was quite an interesting journey. And then when we relocated here, she found her way. And so she's quite enterprising, and she still surprises me after being together, including 6 years of dating, 31 years, and she still surprises me.
Wow. Well, so you found another intellectual there in
from home. That's right.
Right at home.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And then when it comes to our daughter, wow, she's a wonderful blend between the two of us. Mm-hmm. She is as strong spiritually and theologically as she is intellectually and analytically. So it's amazing to kind of see her work, and looking at not only her academic performance at school, but looking at how she interacts and functions in the church. She's a licensed exhorter, and that girl can preach. At age 16, she's quite a preacher.
But she got her license. How old was she when she got her license to preach?
14.
14, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that day. 14.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
and she had a message.
Oh, gracious, yes, she had a message. Yeah. So I'm real proud of her. And and she's in the IB program, or International Baccalaureate program, here in Greensboro at Grimsley High School. And she's doing stellar work. She's made a name for herself, even though we've been here for just 1 year. She's made quite a name for herself in the classroom. And so just to kind of get, sweetheart, now you got to move out of the books. Now you got to do some other things too. But her leaning is always towards community, and what can she do to assist others is just her DNA. Wow. And so she's been a part of different kind of gatherings and leadership opportunities, even since we've been here.
Mhm. That's amazing. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing just a little bit about your family with us. Now, last two questions that I have for you, unless you say something that makes me have another question. But the last two questions are the first one I'll ask is now, you've done a lot, you've seen a lot, but you still have a lot to go. You know,
Absolutely.
what's number one, what's next for you? And in being next, what's your mark or legacy that you want to leave behind? And who do you want to leave that for?
Mm, mm. Well, it's interesting that, I am 49 years old, um, and I am now pastoring a church of 350, and I have had my two dream jobs. Well, this is my third dream job, um, but as a um, full-time professor, I've been there. Um, yeah, and pastoring this church, I am here.
Mhm.
Um, so in terms of at the age of 49, I've kind of been to my the highest places I've been. Um, um, so in terms of where I see myself going, continuing to make my mark where I am, as I said before, um, knowing, claiming my space and filling it. And so being the best daggum pastor, not only to Bethel, but to the Greensboro community that I can be, to make a change on the corner where we are, and to continue to do my work as an adjunct in a seminary to help develop other pastors and other leaders. So to have that effect of, yeah, I have my congregation here, but there are other congregations I'm reaching because I'm reaching their leaders.
Mm. Sounds like you're like that pebble in that you throw in the water, and the ripple effect of that
There you
one
go.
one throw, the ripple effect goes throughout communities,
There you go.
throughout states, throughout the world in a lot of different ways, just by
There you go.
affecting one person here, one person here.
And
I understand.
the other thing that's interesting about me, I am not motivated by a position.
Mm-hmm.
Saying to myself, in 5 years, I want to have this position in the AME church, or in 5 years, I want to do that. No, I believe in blooming where I'm planted. And to use an illustration from my hometown, you can't plow a straight road by looking over your shoulder to see where everybody else is plowing. The only plot of land I have is the one that God has given me. I got to work the land that I have. And whatever opportunities that come my way, take advantage of those opportunities. But let the opportunity come looking for you. Don't you go looking for it. And so, yes, I've been approached by various organizations to take on leadership roles while being here. However, I've said no because I want to spend time getting to know the people that I've been sent to serve. And those are the greatest people right here at Bethel AME Church. And so, no, I'm not interested in leadership here and leadership there. No, here is where I'm planted. This is the work that I have to do. And in face of this pandemic, my goodness, the kind of changes we've had to make with the church in order so that we could move forward and still be relevant and still meet the spiritual needs of the people that we're serving. It would be impossible to do if I'm constantly looking at other things that I could be doing. So no, I'm focusing. I am like a surgeon. I'm focusing on the assignment that is mine. And I think that is important for all men and all men of color. Know your assignment. Your assignment is not everybody else's, and yours, and everybody else's is not yours. Know what your assignment is. As much as I would love to be on the streets with those who are protesting, I can't because of health challenges. I just cannot do it. To put myself out there literally would be a death sentence for me, because being a lifelong asthmatic and being exposed to COVID-19, lights out, Jesus, here I come. And so I cannot allow myself to be exposed out there. However, I can sit down with those who are on the streets. and become one of those sages who understand what movements look like, who participated in some things in his youth, younger years. Yeah, I'm still a young man now, but I used to be a lot younger. And kind of understanding how things move with the law enforcement, given my background as a police chaplain in Atlanta, and understanding the politics in the community, and kind of the ethos of Greensboro, and what is it that we will tolerate for and for how long. So those kinds of things I'm able to offer, instead of being on the ground. I can be more effective knowing my assignment.
Mm. So it sounds like it starts with you. It starts with understanding who you are,
Yep.
knowing your character, kind of where your gifting and your assignment is, and then moving just in
Into
where
that.
you're supposed to be. And in
Yeah.
that, the other resources, obstacles are going to come. We all have obstacles, and we're not going to deny or sit here and act like that there's not laws and policies
Correct.
and different things that are against us. But one of the things I hear you saying is, yes, they may be there, but if you're very clear about who you are and where you're going, there are resources out there that can also lend a hand. And you
Absolutely.
talked about a perspective because you work for the police department, because you understand from a educational standpoint, psychologically, a lot of things on both sides, right?
Yes.
Being a
Yes.
pastor and having to deal with so many people and
Yes.
different issues, and understanding both sides of the issue, and sometimes three sides of the
Yes.
issue,
That's right.
you know, it benefits to not just come from an emotional place, but to come from a place of the heart that has a little bit of the head with it to be able to advance and move things forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, this has been amazing. I want to give you, before I close out, I want to just give you an opportunity. Is there anything that this platform is really for Black men like yourself to be seen and heard? As I said, society doesn't really see and hear Black men. They've
Mm.
already put them in these boxes, and some of those boxes are systematic boxes
Mm-hmm.
were created that
Mm-hmm.
cause them to be unseen and to be more aggressive and
Absolutely.
angry. But and we won't get into that today. But is there anything that you want to leave us with that's on your heart that you feel like you've never been able to say, or you never thought to say before? Whether it's to society as a whole, it's to your other brothers, could
Yeah.
Black or non-Black, or to your African American community. It's on you. Whatever you want to say.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Um, First of all, um, claim your space and fill your space. That is your choice. Claim your space in the African diaspora and fill it with everything that you have. Number two, to be Black also means to understand that we live in a society where there is a systematic and systemic need that is perpetually pressed in our necks. But because we are endowed by our Creator with strength that goes beyond measure, we are able to not only survive, but thrive, even in the face of oppression and suppression. Three, um, do not lose your DNA. Your DNA, our DNA, is spiritual. There must be a connection with our God and our Creator, because we cannot. One thing I discovered, and well, it's not really a discovery as much as it was a affirmation and confirmation. I can't. Everything that I've been able to accomplish, I haven't done it by myself. I've done those things because of my God, who strengthens me, and my ancestors who breathe strength into me. And so being connected to both our Creator and our ancestors gives me the strength to move forward in whatever I have to face. And so never lose that kind of connection in spite of the forces that try to pull us away from that. We must remain connected to that which is eternal. and that can never die. So even though we may not, if you don't feel it, it's not because it is dead, it's that we lost connection. So find your way back to your source of strength and move with it. And the last thing I would say to everyone, we might be bloodied, but we are not bowed. I'm done.
Dr. Clay L. Barrow, I want to say thank you for taking time out to be on the Voices of a Black Man today. I want to let you know that we see and we hear you today. Thank you for telling your story through your lens. Thank you to the audience who watched this discussion today. This was not a discussion for comments, likes, or dislikes, but a place and a platform to just be heard and to be seen. Now, remember, you've heard, you saw. Now it's up to you what you do with that information and how you take action. My name is Sherelle James for the Voices of a Black Man. Thank you so much. Tune in tomorrow at 12 p.m. as we'll be doing this for the next 30 days. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.